Well, you got on the call because it's just 9:30 now. Hey, Carlos, if you'll learn one thing about me, it's don't ever be early. So.
No, those of us that were early were actually late.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I logged in at 9:26, and we had figured out about Brady and Kentucky losing, all of that.
Gas prices are so high, Brady had to come out of retirement, right?
That's what it was.
Who will they blame this time?
All right, well, let's get going then, because I don't have a whole lot. If you look at the report, mine looks like a lot of people's in town. The key phrase is being died in. And let me pull that up real quick. I was looking up some other things here. All right, so the construction defects claims, that one, we talked a lot about some of these last week. That one died in the Senate. The House put a bunch of stuff on there the Senate didn't want. Would have reduced the 10-year statute of repose to 7 years, but left the 10-year if you could prove, that the engineer, architect, or contractor had fraudulently concealed a defect. But they went back and forth, and this was the problem with this bill all along, is it constantly changed, and there was good stuff in it and there was bad stuff in it, and then they would change it and then they would change it back, and it just changed so many times everybody just kind of said forget it. And the House bill that was returned to the House kept the repeal of Chapter 558 in it. We would have been okay because we had asked that if you do that, just keep 0035, the individual liability for engineers, or the liability protections for individual engineers, might be a better way to say it. But and they had done that and put it in. We're just going to put it in 768, but in the end, everybody got tired of that bill, and so it died in the Senate. Transportation projects as well died in the Senate. That one would have done the progressive design build contracts, or allowed for those. It had some stuff in there that we didn't like about the seaports and the airports, but that was supposedly coming out. It did come out of the House bill, but the Senate just never took it any further because, as you can see in the report, the House loaded a number of things in there, mobility fee credits, some kind of research program at the University of Florida. But the one that took it down was reestablishing the Greater Miami Expressway Agency. When the House put that on there, the Senate told them that they weren't willing to get back into that fight. For those that remember, what a fight that was 2 or 3 years ago. And the House demanded to keep it in there. So it died in messages to the Senate. It had gone over to the Senate and they just let it die. They never took up their own bill, so nothing got laid on the table, but both bills ended up dying in the Senate. The structural engineer license isn't a license. It's a recognition program, as it says in the title, which is just that. You get recognized by the Board of Professional Engineers if you take the test and pass it, but there's nothing else that goes with that. I mean, there's no certification, there's no license, it's just a pat on the back and, good job kind of thing, which I know the structural engineers didn't like, but they went the House passed it and the Senate went ahead and passed it. So it's there, whether we really wanted it or not. And that's why you see unknown there. Nobody ever really went back and said yay or nay to it. So, that's one that passed, I guess I should say. And then the big one that we went back and forth on that for the last 2 weeks of session. Every day there was new amendments and trying to work through the issues. And in the end, the House really wanted condominium reform. The Senate did not. So the House had sent the bill over to the Senate. The Senate put theirs on the table, passed the House bill, but they stripped everything out, all the condo reform and everything, except the only thing that was left was basically our recommendations, which is kind of weird because that's where the bill started. Was 1702 just started as our recommendations, but it kind of went full circle and came back. and that's all that was there. But the House said, you know, without the condo reform, they wouldn't pass it, and so they didn't take it back up. So that bill died as well. We've had, you know, quite a bit of questions and stuff from the press. The press has beat up this legislature a little bit over this, because it'll be another year, obviously, before the legislature can take action again. And it's actually a little more than a year, because session next year will be March and April. So we'll just be getting started in session this time next year. But some things are happening in that arena, and that is the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have kind of stepped in and said, you know, they're not going to back the mortgages on these units. You know, if the buildings haven't been properly maintained or haven't been inspected and have a clean bill of health. And actually, I think it's Fannie Mae that has actually come forward as well and said, and, you know, we're not going to back any of the mortgages if the condo isn't withholding, you know, 10% of their revenues every year as reserves. So there is some of that. There's some local municipalities, local governments that are, you know, passing requirements. We know how that works. You know, it becomes a hodgepodge of regulations. So hopefully we can bring that back next year. But I kind of look at it, go, I don't know what else we could have done. I mean, Edie did a fantastic job of keeping it in the media the whole time, because, you know, quite frankly, it had been forgotten when legislative session, when the legislative session started. And you might remember it took the House forever to get a bill out. I think the Senate bill had gone through 2 committees by the time the House even put something out. So I don't know how big their appetite was. You know, they kept saying, oh, what a great bill. And they got, you know, all the legislators would talk, and, you know, it passed everything usually, and nobody had any, you know, problems with it along the way and on either side in any of the committees. But obviously there were some people working in the background. So, you know, I'll be with Senator Bradley's going to speak at a lunch for FES and ACEC in Jacksonville next week. And I'll have a little time to chat with her and kind of get her take on it, since, you know, she was the sponsor in the Senate. So I'll talk with her and get a little more information. But that was really disappointing, because there was so much work going on with that, with the staff over in the House and other folks, that, you know, it's just a shame that didn't pass. It was, you know, one vote away from at least getting the inspection process in place, and you know, but it just didn't get there. So we'll have to continue working on that and see if there's something we can do to appease the condo associations. Just a few other things to add in. I don't know if Sandy's on the call, but the bill that would have increased the amount that governments could pay for, you know, currently it's limited, if you sue the government, to 200,000, 200 individual, 300,000 per incident. That never got any further than it last week. So it actually never got out of the Appropriations Committee on the one side, and it was on the floor. I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was the House or the Senate, but never came up for a hearing, never made the special order calendar. So that one's dead and gone. You know, a little bit of good news is, you know, the transportation DOT's budget is fully intact. I think it's about $10.5 billion. They added in monies to raise the secretary's salary to $270,000 a year, up from $200,000. You know, I don't want to say better the pool, because I thought TiVo was great, but, you know, their RFDOT is way behind on salary for their secretary compared to some other states. They're also providing an additional $41 million to FDOT for salaries for staff. So hopefully over there will get raised. We will have a gas tax holiday in October. And all of this budget stuff that I'm talking about, remember that the governor still gets his crack at it. And he's warning people in the media and warning the legislature that he is going to make some cuts. So the entire budget is $112 billion, which is far and away the largest budget the state's ever had. but we don't know how much he's planning on cutting. So that, we'll have to keep an eye on that. But there will be a gas tax. They will suspend the gas tax for the month of October. It's estimated to cost about $200 million, and they will pay for that with monies that they have received from the federal government for COVID relief. So the trust fund doesn't lose any money. It'll still get its money. Although, there's some of us that think that there's a lot of states doing this right now. They're talking about doing it at the federal level. ACEC National is fighting it. It just sets bad precedent to anytime you get in trouble to cut the gas tax. But, it's a good election year move, to do that when the gas is so high. So that's kind of where all that stands. And then most important, because we lost this one along the way, we had reported on it back in late February, but in the end, it passed both houses and has already been signed by the governor. But strawberry shortcake is the official dessert of the state of Florida now, just in case you were wondering.
I'm still going to abstain from my any kind of support for that bill.
That's too bad. It's the law.
You and I both, Scott. I still think Patalitos, the guayaba is the way to go. So.
Key lime pie all the way.
We can try to change that next year.
We really got our taxes worth by that decision.
We kind of find it funny up here. It's a long, stressful session, and every now and then I throw something in there. It's a little bit fun. The debates on that were kind of fun to listen to. But anyway, so it's a year where, we didn't get hurt, but we really didn't get anything out of it either. I think reading FTBA's report, and I got the report from Floridians for Better Transportation yesterday. They're kind of the same way. The bills they list, none of them really made it. So it just was one of those years. It really was a kind of a nasty year. It was a weird year because they were taking on a lot of the press has actually dubbed this the cultural wars legislative session because they had so many issues that they really controversial issues they were dealing with. The 15-week abortion ban, the stuff that they can teach in school or not teach in school related to race and to sexual orientation and those sorts of things. They had redistricting in the middle of all of that. So. And there were others that they took on, and many of which I think will be determined in the end to be unconstitutional. But they weren't really concerned about that. It's red meat for the base, and that's kind of the way they handled it. So we'll see what happens with those bills as they go into court, because they're certainly going to court, and see how all that works out. But that was really all sort of aimed at the election and getting the base riled up and and doing it that way, which kind of is a shame, but that we've come to that. But we have, and we're not the only state that has. Hopefully all that'll settle down in the years to come. But that's kind of my report. I'll take any questions that anybody has. They did come back Monday to finalize the budget, so they really just ended, and we'll get a final report together to get out to the entire membership, and we'll take another look just to make sure there's not something in there, good or bad. But as far as we know, I think our folks do a really good job of catching everything. There shouldn't be anything there, and I don't know if JW's on the phone, because that reminds me the language that was put into the budget implementing bill on the Senate side that would have required another report from FDOT telling the legislature and the governor how they're going to save costs in engineering and design. They even had construction in this one, which at least was good, but that did not make the final cut. So that's not going to be part of the program going forward. So the general rule for this session is not much made the cut.
Alan, Angelina's got a question.
Okay. Sorry, I don't see.
Good morning, everyone. It's more of a comment.
So the structural engineering bill that passed, which the Rules Committee Chair, Mr. Fleming, dubbed the SERP bill, Structural Engineering Recognition Program, got a lot of discussion yesterday in the Rules Committee meeting, because amongst other things, it has the word may in there as opposed to shall. So it's not clear what this accomplishes and what this prevents or what this allows, but it's not a license and it's not a certification.
No, it's not.
So I'm concerned about unintended consequences, and Andy Lovenstein and Tom Grogan and I were the three engineers who attended that Rules Committee meeting yesterday morning and discussed it. And of course, Tom Grogan from FSEA sees this as a step towards the SC designation. But both Andy and I warned about, what is going to be interpreted by the jurisdictions that are writing their own rules now about all these different inspections. So just be aware that this is going to be a hot topic for a while, because it looks and sounds innocuous. It's only 2 pages, but it's requires the board to create rules and applications, and and it's just a recognition. So it's not, I'm sure it will get misconstrued as being a certification, but it is not a certification and it is not a license.
And that's correct. I talked to Zaina about it after it had come out, and we determined that it really accomplished nothing. It goes so far as to say, it kind of explains the recognition, and it is a pat on the back. You've gone above and beyond, what you needed to do to have a PE license, and you can use this in your marketing materials if you want to. Is kind of what the bill says. So,
well, you always could. Nobody stopped you from saying that you had taken the SC exam before.
I'm sorry, say that again. It doesn't.
I said you always had the ability to market that and say that you had taken the structural engineering exam before. There was nothing preventing you from doing that prior to this anyway.
Yeah, I know. And so yeah, we're in agreement that the bill really does nothing. But you're right that, kind of throws it out there and lets them start to make rules, but, hopefully they'll understand it is what it is. And, I don't share Tom Grogan's opinion. I think what this was the House saying this is as far as we're going to go with this. You guys have brought this for the last 3-4 years, and we haven't even given it committee hearings. So here, we'll give you a recognition, but that's all you're going to get. And I'm not sure moving forward, as playing that into the whole Surfside thing, that issue might have to be addressed. It'd have to be addressed in a different way. But one of the biggest problems that we had dealing with the Surfside bill and the inspections was who would do them or who was qualified to do them. And without a statutory definition of a structural engineer, it made it very, very hard. They kept wanting to drop back to the special inspectors for threshold buildings, which is really the closest thing you can come to a definition of a structural engineer. But that would do 2 things. It would allow people who maybe had never done an inspection on an existing building, if their career had been all new construction, to actually do these. And for some of our folks out there that, are structural engineers and do inspect existing buildings, it would have cut them out because they never went and got certified as a special inspector, because it's not their niche, so to speak. So, so we had gotten that out.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The criteria to become a special inspector is very strict. It's very difficult. Most of the people who have that designation today were grandfathered in. I believe the list is less than 1,000 in the whole state. I need to double check that. So,
it's about.
But what is? It's how many?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, you broke up.
I had talked to Zaina about that. It's about 660.
Right.
Yes.
So So unfortunately, because the Surfside bill didn't pass and this one did, people are going to start making up their own definitions for structural engineer, which a lot of the jurisdictions that are mandating inspections now are using that terminology anyway.
Right. Yeah, so
And they're
that definitely caused some problems. We talked about that quite a bit, and in the end, you know, our recommendation had been, you know, a structural engineer architect that had 10 years of, I believe, 10 years of design and 5 years of inspection experience, or that might be the other way around. In the end, you know, we had agreed during the process to go to 5 and 5. And then in the end, they were saying, you know, they were just going to go with 5 years of inspection experience of existing buildings, because they were afraid that there weren't going to be enough engineers to do the job. And then in the very end, it just said you had to be licensed under 471. It had the 4 main points that we had made in our recommendations, and I would still say, you know, 90% of what we had recommended was there. You know, they just we couldn't that was a real hard one to get past without some sort of a definition of what a structural engineer was. It just seemed like everything anybody came up with on either side, either House or Senate staff or our side, either, you know, stopped some people from doing it who were qualified, or let people in, so to speak, to do those inspections who probably weren't qualified. So,
right.
So
I guess my point is it's now something that the FBPE board needs to deal with. And again, we need to be careful about unintended consequences because it will get misused and misconstrued.
All right. All right. Well, tell them to drag their feet on it, and we'll try to get it fixed next legislative session.
I don't think that's an option. You know, they're already working on it, even though it hasn't been signed yet. And, you know, there's a chance it won't get signed. We don't know yet.
Oh, I know. I talked to, you know, John and Zana, and I know they were already working on, you know, what rules they would have to do to deal with that bill, and, you know, for the Surfside bill. So I know they've been working on those things, and yeah, it's a shame because it really, you know, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. You know, you had 98 people die because a building fell down, and you've got a whole bunch of buildings out there that are just the same age. They may have been maintained better. Some of them maybe not. You just don't know, and you won't know until somebody goes in there and inspects them. And you know, so to me, it just seemed like a no-brainer. It just seemed, you know, right up to the last day, like we're going to pass something to get the process started, but they just didn't get there.
Alan, this is Walter Kloss. I chair the alternative contracting task team, and I see also there's a comment regarding the progressive design bill not passing, and so where are we going from here? It's a shame that it's not been approved because you know, FDOT has been very progressive in alternative delivery and design build contracts, and kind of the leader in the country, and there are now a lot of other states utilizing progressive design build. It kind of minimizes some of the risk for the design build teams and places it in the appropriate location of who should be responsible for it, and so where do we go now from here? Or do we need to do something more to bring this back up next year and to hopefully get it passed? And personally, them putting a floor on the bill to me was the wrong way to do it, and so it's limiting the projects to being either 250 to 400 million and above, when there's so many other smaller projects that probably can be done with a progressive design build. So what's your thoughts on that?
I know, you know, that was an important one to the FDOT. One of the things that was dragging on that bill the whole way through was they went back for, meaning the transportation builders, went back and they had the language in there that currently under the law, you have to spend at least 15% of the annual revenue of the trust fund for, seaports and airports and some other things. They had placed a cap so that it read, at least 15%, no more than 25%. Well, some people didn't like that. Obviously the seaports and airports are the ones affected, but even within DOT, they didn't. But those groups were dogging that bill the entire process. And, it's kind of like you had this one good idea there that everybody was for, but it, had a bunch of chains behind it that it was having to drag along. Finally, near the end, they decided to get rid of that. And the House had done it. If the Senate had brought it up again, they were ready to take that language out as well. And it seemed like, it was in good shape to go, because it would just then be, the bulk of the bill would just be the progressive design bill. And then the House added all that stuff on it. And when they put the Miami-Dade stuff on there, that was the nail in the coffin that killed it. So going forward, I mean, certainly I think it's something that should be brought back. It was too popular. It had too much support. You just got to get some sponsors, especially the sponsors, and especially a sponsor in the House that's gonna fight to keep the amendments off of it. Because Senator Hooper had said all along he was afraid that bill would become a train. Because if you find a bill that's moving and it's got something that's popular on it, you try to put stuff, the legislators try to put stuff on it that maybe isn't as popular, but will go anyway because of the other issue. But in this case, they put so much on it. Nobody ever vetted that program at the University of Florida to see how much that was going to cost, in the end. I mean, they can always put a number on it at the beginning, but you never know in the long run unless somebody really takes a look. So they'd added that, and they added credits for certain things. And they, but the Miami-Dade stuff was really the poison pill that got it. So I would say the number one thing is we've got to get sponsors that will keep the bill clean, so to speak. And that's not uncommon for that to happen. And usually when we try to run bills, we talk to our sponsors early on about that, people are going to try to amend this bill. Some may come along with some good ideas that you're okay to put on the bill and keep it moving along. But usually that's going to be an amendment that brings you support, not one that weighs it down. And in this case, in the House, they put amendments on there that weighed it down. So that would be, at least at this point, just coming out of session, knowing what I know, and I'll probably, learn more as we go along, as people do the postmortems on these things. But the biggest thing is to keep bills like that clean and keep the amendments off of them.
Who was pushing that bill last year? And we think they'll do the same thing next year. Think it's hot enough that it'll go again.
The transportation bill.
Well, the progressive design bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it came from, I guess, transportation builders and FDOT probably, initiated it. But I had even heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, so don't let anybody go running out there saying Alan said. But I had heard at some point that the transportation builders kind of soured on it, and it may be that issue of they had that both of them in the end had it at $400 million, which, that's a big project. And I've heard that from a number of people that, it can, it should apply to some smaller projects as well. Although, we were willing to accept it because, at least get the language on the books and then go back to change the number, in the future. That's where it was initiated. And, JW had, brought it to me first, and we ran it through the process, and everybody supported it. And, it was a great thing. And early on, it was moving fast. I mean, you would have looked at that one and said that they'll be done with that one midway through session. And then all of a sudden the brakes got put on. And it could be, it just seems to me like there was a lot of these bills that in a normal session would have passed. there was something, and I can't put my finger on it. There was, because publicly they appear fine with each other. There's something going on between the Senate president and the House Speaker and the governor, because they were undermining each other's stuff. We knew, for instance, that the Senate president really wanted to reduce or eliminate the statute of repose. And the House then went to, they played with that bill whole session until it finally, everybody just said, this, it's too dangerous, just let it go. No telling what's going to wind up at the end with this thing. And but there was something going on there where the House just kept messing with the Senate and vice versa. And I was reading the other stuff about where the Senate and the governor disagreed on things, and so bills died. And that happens every session, but it just seemed to be, number one, it seemed really secretive this time, because I can remember going back, geez, if any of y'all remember Senate president named Jim King, who was one of the Senate presidents during Jeb Bush's tenure as governor, and those two did not get along. And but it was open. You knew where each person was, and you could work around it. If you don't really know what the problem is, it's hard to work around it. And so, we'll see what happens with the elections. Obviously, Wilton Simpson is termed out now as senator, so we'll have Senator Pasadoma next year. We've got a good relationship with her. She'll be straight up with us about stuff. I'll say that. And that's all we can ask. We need to know what's going on. And this session, just the whole time, it just kind of seemed weird. And I think it was some of the issues that they were taking up, and they really had some people in a pinch, on some of these issues. Some of those legislators did not want to vote the way they voted on some of these bills. But they didn't have any choice if they wanted their own bills to get through. So there was a lot of that going on this year. And so, but I think, again, I think we can bring that back. I'll get with Ananth and just see, because I had heard at some point FTBA had a problem with it, but and they had brought it forward. So I'll get to the bottom of that, see what we can do for next year.
So Alan, again, Mr. Walter, do I need to work with you as you move forward to help identify any sponsors?
It's always helpful. Yeah. If somebody that's really got an interest in the issue, obviously sometimes problems with bills like that is the person sponsoring it doesn't really understand it to begin with. They're just doing it because they like you. So yeah, if you know some legislators that, actually understand, the procurement system for highways and that sort of thing, that'd be an excellent person to have.
I do. Okay.
Because Senator Hooper, he's been around a while, and I'm not saying he doesn't know anything about it, but his background was as a firefighter. So I'm not sure how deeply he knows, this issue.
Alan, there's a question from Eddie in the chat. Eddie, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hey, Alan, I just wanted to know if that 41 million that you discussed for FDOT salary, is that in addition to the percent increase because I heard they're getting a percent increase already, but is that included in that 5.5% increase for state employees, or is that something in addition?
No, I think that's just, that's their part of the whole, because they always, and about 5% of me, hold back on that, make sure I'm not wrong. But when people have talked about us going in and trying to get help for FDOT and their pay for quite some time, and it's always that, when it comes to things outside of firefighting and law enforcement and stuff like that, they're usually it's an across the board percentage. But I can look that up for you, Eddie, just to make sure that that's not in addition to. But my first take on it is it's kind of their 5%.
Okay, and I know you mentioned the adjustment for the state secretary. I know that when they made an adjustment on the state secretary, they also did for the district secretaries. Any discussion there that you've heard of for not only state but the districts?
I have not heard any conversation on the districts. The information that was sent to me just mentions the secretary.
Okay, probably because they're advertising it now for, or have taken applications and so forth and hiring that position. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Well, I appreciate everybody showing up every Friday morning. So obviously this will be the last one. There is a possibility that the legislature will come back in special session to deal with property insurance, which is another key issue that they kind of failed to finish this year. And it truly is a big problem out there, as I'm sure you all know. So there is a decent possibility they'll come back in special session for that. We'll take a shot at it. I don't know how successful we can be, but we'll probably take the shot at getting the inspections, the CC or not CCNA, the Surfside language back, on the call for that special session. That's probably a long shot, but every now and then you get lucky. So, we'll probably try to do that if they come back in sessions. I may not be totally done with them yet because, the argument against coming back in special session is going to be, obviously it's an election year and they want to stay home and campaign. But, as I have, they have a year now before they can even start a legislative session. So it really becomes kind of about a 14-month wait. And I don't know that our property insurance market, can wait that long. But with that, if there's no more questions, again, thanks for showing up on Fridays. I really appreciate it. And we'll get the full report done and out, and we'll do it all again next year.
Okay. Well,
Good job, Alan.
thank you very much. Sorry. And thank you very much to you, to John, Derek, Edie, and Jeff for the work you've done and the staff. So thank you.
I echo Shaw's comments. Thank you very much. Kept us
As do I.
informed and kept us out of trouble. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a great team.
Good job.
Good job,
Thanks,
Alan.
Great job, Alan.
All right, thanks,
Guys,
guys.
Alan.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
all.